All right, we are live, Mr. J. Ledbetter. How goes it, my friend?
Yay! I am doing very well, JD. I'm very happy to see you in your Mighty Ducks jersey.
Yeah, got my Mighty Ducks jersey.
Regular listeners may know, or followers on Twitter may know, that JD absolutely hates the Mighty Ducks, and yet here he is rocking the Charlie Conway number 96. We love to see it,
Look,
JD. We love to see it.
It is incredibly ironic, because this is a gift for my mother, who clearly doesn't listen to the show or follow me on social media. If everyone wants to say hi, here's Mr. Samuel.
Sam is in the house.
Sam is in the house. Yes. Hi, buddy. And so my mom was looking for gifts for the both of us, and knew that he had started playing hockey. And so she gets online somewhere, is able to find these jerseys, because she knew that I love it as a kid, obviously.
Yeah, right.
And so she got one for each of us. And I as I mentioned on Twitter yesterday, I have complicated feelings about the films.
Yep.
But the jersey itself is really nice. Like, it's really nice.
It just gives you a chance to get back in tune with your inner child. So really, it's the ultimate blessing.
It is. Absolutely.
I'm playing Fortnite with Jacob, so I won't disturb you.
Okay. So we're obviously here to not talk about the Mighty Ducks, although we could do that.
Reboot coming soon to Disney Plus.
There is that. Obviously, Warner Brothers dropped their huge news on us earlier this afternoon that their 2021 slate is going to be in theaters. So we'll still get the theaters for those that want it, but they'll simultaneously drop all those films on HBO Max as well. I guess let's just get into it, Jay. I'm curious, what are your general overall feelings about this?
Well, the gut reaction for most people seems to be, oh boy, movie theaters. What are we going to do here? What are we going to do? Is this the beginning of the end? And that's a fair criticism. However, we got to keep in mind that if it's just Warner Brothers, that's okay. The question is this just the first domino to fall?
Yeah, will Disney follow? Will Universal do something? Paramount,
They can survive without a Wonder Woman and a Dune maybe, but once you get all these blockbusters, every tentpole starts doing this. It's a slippery slope we're going down here, and I have very mixed feelings about it because I do miss big new releases, but at the same time, I've loved watching older stuff. I've loved having kind of an independent focused year, and it's kind of like, well, if we can't have that other stuff, it's okay because we have this other stuff to subside us in the meantime, and I want to watch that stuff in a movie theater. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited to not have to go to the movie theater to watch Space Jam 2. I'd be lying. I'm happy that I can watch that from my couch. So it's a full mixed bag. It's a little scary, though. It's a little scary.
It is a little scary. I do agree. And it's complicated for me as well, in the sense that I am dubious for the long-term health of movie theaters. But many people have pointed out on Twitter as well that theaters have always had to evolve. They've constantly had to go through things in the past, and they've still continued to be a thing. And that'll be the case here once again. They'll evolve, they'll change, but these films are still playing in theaters. Where I get concerned is over the last 10 years or so, there's the box office numbers, just broadly speaking, have just declined, right? There's been that slope downwards, and because of all kinds of things, right? Streaming, the rise of tentpole films, the Avengers, and just the pricing. I've talked about this before on the show. I've mentioned it on Twitter that to go to the movies, to take myself, Brandy, and Sam, that's a $60 trip each time. That's very expensive. And that's just 3 of us. Think about a family of 5 or 6.
It can get so much more expensive than that so fast too. If you're like, let's do the popcorn. It's Avengers. Let's blow it out with the popcorn, the soda, the candy. Yeah. You're looking at 3 figures.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're a family of 5 or 6, you're looking at $100 or at least for each trip. So to be able to watch that stuff at home, you'll save money. It's very convenient. I was talking with a friend of mine at work when the news dropped. Just in terms of that myself, like as a cinephile, I'm going to miss going to the theaters. I much prefer that. I love the theater experience. But at the same time, as a father, like the convenience factor of watching things at home that's a very powerful thing.
There are benefits. There is something to be said for that. There are plenty of movies every single year that I go to, and I say, I really didn't need to see that in a theater. I mean, I'll just be honest. It's like, there are movies that just play equally well at home as they do in a movie theater. And I really miss going to a movie theater and having that experience of like, whoa, I'm so glad I got to see this in a theater. Nothing else can match that experience when the film matches up with the experience and everything about the film is improved by the big screen, the big sound, all that stuff, the experience of being around other people. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe the beginning of the year is pretty slow and you guys have to cover Tom and Jerry. You're probably pretty happy that you didn't have to go to the theater to watch Tom and Jerry.
Yeah, it will be a push and pull in that regard for sure. And I think the other thing to think about is the short term, right? Like we're still in a pandemic. And I think that's why this is the smart play, at least for the next year, is that we still have to consider. And if my wife was in here right now, she would, unequivocally say that none of us should go to a movie theater, regardless of how we feel. Now, it obviously depends on how comfortable you are with that. Our movie theaters here in South Florida haven't been doing very well. There's not a ton of people going, thankfully. Most people are going, but a lot of people still are going to restaurants, they're going to bars, things like that. And that's why Florida continues to be, just a clown show when it comes to dealing with the pandemic, but
COVID capital, baby.
Yeah. But if you open up theaters fully, obviously that's just going to lead to more problems. And so in the short term, having the theater as a solution is great for those that still want it. But at the same time, until it's safe again, to have these releases at home, I think it's the smart play. But
are we thinking, are you considering a year from now still short term? Because I was surprised that they pushed it out that far with the schedule. I thought it was going to be maybe first half of the year. They went all the way through next year.
All the way. Well, and I think that's like, how soon is this vaccine going to be out? And how soon is everybody going to get it? We're in unprecedented times when it comes to all of that. Because usually this stuff takes years in order to get vaccines. And it hasn't even been a full year since the pandemic started. We have vaccines that apparently work, but they're still working on the research for all that. So like having all of 2021, I think that kind of makes sense. And even going into
from
2022,
Warner Brothers angle, what's the play here? What are they thinking?
Well, here's the other thing about this. So like I've said this about like whenever we discuss sports, when I've had this in other industries too, usually when there's changes like this, you never go back. Like you never go back.
That is true.
Like there's the whole debate right now for Major League Baseball. Like, are they going to go back to the regular playoffs it was before, or are they going to stay at the expanded? Like if the NFL expands and adds another team, like they're probably going to stay with that. It's very rare. Like every time that happens, you never go back. Now this is unprecedented though, in the sense that it's happening in a pandemic. So maybe that does change things. But in my mind, I'm thinking if this, and especially when you couple it with what we said earlier, as far as the overall trend, like the trajectory of, because I've mentioned this on the show for years now. I've always felt this was going to be the model going forward, was in theaters and at home simultaneously. The pandemic has just sped up that process. So I don't know if we're ever going to go back, because I've always felt this was going to be the case anyway. The pandemic just sped it up by 5 years, a decade, or whatever the case was going to be there.
Well, I just look at it strategically, because they knew, hey, oh, look who it is. Mr. McQuaid is in the house. Hello, Ryan. We have been talking about you for the last 10 or so minutes.
I bet it was all negative things that I'm going to have to go look at.
I will say, I do have a much cooler background when you get me real trim like this. And only...
You're looking like a real snack tonight, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Look at you looking all dapper, like you're going to like some sort of dinner. Casual dinner.
You're
a big boy.
Professional.
Mm-hmm.
I got my big boy pants on.
Put on the big boy sweater today and everything.
All right. Well, as we welcome in Ryan McQuaid, welcome Ryan.
Ryan, I don't know if you heard, Warner Brothers is putting all their movies on HBO Max.
I haven't. No, it wasn't the big news. I thought we were coming on to talk about NBA basketball. I had no idea that this was about that. Maybe thought there was like some sort of collective bargaining agreement thing, because then that's what all I heard in the sort of waiting room about JD, about like collective bargaining.
We were talking
stuff.
Sports. Yeah, but
we were. But anyway, back to Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers knows that this year, regardless of, no matter their distribution model next year, it's going to be a down year. And so to me, this feels like them just,
you think,
plan. They're experimenting, I think. Yeah. And they're doing a couple of things. One, if you remember last year, the Paramount decrees were, they're done with now. So the distribution, the studios can now be completely in charge of their own distribution. And that's been coming for a long time. Netflix obviously kind of broke that whole thing in the first place, and streaming broke that. But so that immediately gave the theaters less leverage in any sort of negotiations moving forwards. And they're just slowly going to start chipping away at any leverage any of these third-party movie theaters have. And whether that just means they get a much smaller cut, and I don't know if they'll be able to survive if they end up getting that, or if we just end up having Warner Brothers theaters. That's another possibility as well. But everybody keeps saying online, these movies make $1 billion. Do you think they're going to say no to $1 billion? Well, they do and they don't, right? The theaters get a healthy cut of that, probably 40-ish% of that. So knock that down to 600 million right off the bat. You have to market a movie more if you put it in a theater as well. So add some expenses on top of that. And I'm still trying to really make sense of the economics of it, because JD and I were talking about just how expensive it is to go to a movie in the first place. If you have a family of 5 and you're going to see Tom and Jerry, you're spending $100 at the movie theater.
Poor you.
Whereas with HBO Max, you're just paying $15 for 1 month. Yeah. One smart thing that Warner did do was the 1 month at a time thing, where it'll only be on HBO Max for 1 month and then it will be off. Because that way people can't get the subscription in November and just watch everything.
Yep.
They have to just kind of keep it there so that they can keep watching the next movie that comes out. Because there's a good number of movies in there.
And there's no more free trials either. It's what they announced today. So if you want to pay for it, you got to get that. You got to get on that money. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
exactly. And that it's just, but $15 a month for an entire family, that's a lot of movies that they're not going to. And I understand that people are going to the movies less and less, and maybe it makes sense for the family that goes to the movie once or twice a year for this to now be the new normal, for them to just have this subscription that you forget about and is now just an expense that you don't even give a second thought to every month. I know I have like 6 of those with all the stupid streaming services I pay for now. It's basically cable again, so we circled back to that. But the finances are something I'm still kind of sifting my way through, but they're going to let us know whether it works out or not, because this will either keep going or stop come December of next year.
Yeah.
Ryan, why don't you go ahead and give us your general thoughts on it, since you just joined?
Okay. Well, I've just been sort of all day kind of sifting through it as we have. And I was I'm not as sort of like let's burn down the whole place now sort of mindset. Not I'm Jay asked me earlier in our chat, like, where do you find the optimism in this? And I don't necessarily find the optimism as much as I find like sort of logical sense when it comes to that these theaters aren't going to go away. Because Jay did bring up the fact that not every one of these movies make $1 billion, but a ton of them do, and a ton of them finance their smaller films, to be honest, any of their profits, especially someone like Disney. I mean, they've sort of bought all these acquisitions over the last couple of years. They're not going to want to lose money. I mean, they've got literally James Cameron's got like 900 sequels waiting on the rack for them of Avatar. And even though I still believe that's the biggest Ponzi scheme on the face of this planet, they still want to get that money back, and they're not going to want to always put that on a streaming platform.
He's going to discover Atlantis with that money. I know that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to dig to the core of the earth and find out that there's life there or something, some stupid bullshit that he does. Anyway, but I think this overall is that the one thing I think when we talk about this, when you talk about the cost of going to the theater, because JD, I know we've talked about that, you and I have before, because I take it from sort of my sense of me as just going to the theater myself, and you take it from, of course, the angle of you, Sam, and Brandy, and so I very much take it from the standpoint of like I agree with you. Doing these streaming services, even though if you start adding them all up to a certain degree, you're almost right around the $60 or whatever that you're going to spend, and you're spending that monthly. And that doesn't mean and guarantee that they are catering content for families all the way. I mean, you look at the slate of films that Warner Brothers is announcing, not a lot of animated, not a lot of kids films in that. Like, I mean, there's Wonder Woman, which I guess is for families. And then you have stuff like Judas and the Black Messiah. You have Dune. That's not for kids. And so there's a ton of, sort of different, I guess you could say, problems with all this. But the number one thing I think about and is the sort of the theaters themselves. And I've talked with a lot of these theater owners here in Texas that have been open, and people always ask me, how have they stayed open this entire time? And the way that they've stayed open is they've been very ahead of the curve, smart, planning their stuff out. And the ones that are going to fall apart are the ones that aren't planned and don't have any plan whatsoever, like an AMC.
Ryan, the problem is not the safety; it's the demand to go to the movies.
I disagree, because
the reason that places are closing is because they're operating at a loss.
Well, yes, but they also are employing people, so you have to. Beyond this whole thing, we have to think of this from the human standpoint as well. That hundreds, thousands of people are losing their jobs one way or another with all of this. It's easy to put stuff on a streaming platform and all of us to just say, oh, cool, we get to see Dune early. People, that pop the popcorn or rip the tickets or clean up the theater, after Jay makes a mess of it, they because he's a messy guy. Those people are going to lose their jobs, and that hurts our economy. This is a terrible thing.
Warner Brothers doesn't care about that.
In the long, yes, understandably so, but it goes back to also something I saw on Twitter today from Matt Goldberg over at Collider, and he made a good point, is that at a certain point when we get this vaccine, which is actually, I saw today that 1.4 million sort of already vials of the vaccine are being shipped down here to Texas this month. So the vaccine's going to slowly but surely come over the next 6 months. When that does happen, the demand's going to increase back up. And I think in 2022, like I've said this all time, that's when we're going to sort of get back to a quote unquote normalcy of whatever is left over. But I've also said that 2021 is going to be a hellish landscape because they pushed everything back, didn't release it, didn't do a strategy like they're doing with Wonder Woman. And this is sort of the cause and effect of that. No, Universal's already sort of hinted at that they're going to do something like this. They talked about that way a long time ago. Smaller studios already have made deals like A24 with Apple and Neon with Hulu. So they're gonna be fine as well. Netflix is buying everything under the planet to win Oscars at this point. So it really just comes, and then of course Disney has Disney Plus, which they've sort of been very limited with the numbers, but overall, I think everyone's really just sort of nervous and scared, and quite frankly, a little bit of house ridden today, and getting all this news. And I think that it's a 2021 solution and a good problem to have, because now we'll be able to know that this content is going to be readily available to us, and we're going to see it, and we're going to know the price point, even though I totally think the price point is going to jump up about, I think, a good 50%, if not completely double itself.
Impossible.
No.
The only reason they have to do this in the first place is because they did such a terrible job of rolling it out.
Yeah,
so this is actually making up for lost ground. Is what
the other thing too is that reading a report today is that people are still confused as fuck. So I'm sorry, JD, confused as hell.
I can't edit this. This is live.
They're confused as hell about the fact that between HBO and HBO Max, they screwed this completely up when they launched this whole app to begin with. So you're going to have that demographic of older people that already are technologically unsound or whatnot, who go to the movies as well, that are not going to know how in the hell to get to these movies. And so there's going to be also a trial and error with this for sure. We're going to have patience. But overall, I mean, what am I going to do? Sit here and bitch about it? Like, there's nothing I can do or say that's going to change any of this. This is the way it's going to be for 2021. And I'm sure they will reevaluate and reassess in 2022. And because at the end of the day, they can make the most money going to the theaters, unless they find a way in this next year through commercials or driving up the cost of the apps or whatever it may be to make those billions of dollars. And that's really what it's just going to come down to, is if they're going to use, like what Jay said, this year as a trial run, 2021, see how it goes, because otherwise it's going to be like the question that we've all been having about Netflix the last couple of years. How the hell are they making all this money to give all these blank checks out? And how is it not crumbled by their feet?
They're just taking on billions and billions
of debt.
Of dollars.
You know what I mean?
Debt.
Exactly. Yeah. So I do honestly think that at the end of the day, the studios still do prefer to do a theatrical, because they still are doing a theatrical run with this. The
studios prefer to do whatever makes them the most money,
and that's still going to the theaters, because look, at almost full capacity. I mean, the theaters that are going to be open when this all runs, it'll probably be around 40 to 50%, maybe once a vaccine starts, and then it'll slowly deteriorate from there. But
I still think going forward, and maybe this is where you and I just differ a little bit on this, Ryan, is, and this is what Jay and I was talking about right before you came on. So forgive me if this is redundant to listeners out there, but just for your own context, what I was saying and why I brought up the sports analogy is because oftentimes in sports, when they add things, they never go back. They add rules, they add playoff team, whatever, they never go back. And I've noted this for years on the show, that I've always thought this was going to be where things were going, because the trajectory of the box office has been in a downward slope, while at-home comfort has skyrocketed, and TVs and sound systems and everything that comes with that. Mm-hmm. So putting all of that together, this pandemic has given Warner Brothers, and I'm assuming other studios now, the chance to expedite that process, where going forward, I think we're going to have some mixture of this. Now, once we get the vaccines, which I don't think will be a short-term thing. I think that will at least, by the time it's rolled out, by the time even some people are even comfortable taking it, that's going to be at least a year, maybe 2 years. But going forward, I think we're going to see some combination of this, where films will go to theaters, but they'll go home sooner than what we're used to.
Yeah, I mean, they're already doing that.
Yeah,
the
but
Universal AMC deal.
Well,
Now Universal's probably like, wait, we could have just said no.
Yeah, but I think the one thing you have to, and I agree with you, JD, is that the one thing that this will probably do more often once we start getting the theaters open back up 100% is, opening weekend will be the deciding factor of if they're going to then take it out of the theaters quickly.
It could be one weekend. It's at home.
Yeah, they could be like, I'm just going to use it as an example because it's the next film. But Wonder Woman didn't do so hot. I thought it was going to make like $200 million at the box office, and it only made, let's say, it flopped at 75, which is incorrect. But just let's say it went like that. They'd be like, okay, well, we're going to cut back the theaters because we have another film coming out. Cut back the theaters, put it on HBO Max, and we'll keep it in small theater runs with a month of HBO Max. Then take it off of HBO Max, let the theaters die down to the point where then it's time to release it on Blu-ray and in 4K and rentals and all that stuff and get all the money there. That's probably what it's going to end up being like. And so we then will have, as a society and as a film going community, the biggest power it is because of the fact that our dollars and cents for these movies are going to matter the most when they do open back up, because of the fact that if they have all these deals for streaming platforms and they're putting them in the theaters, then they're going to need to see progressions and percentages of money, especially for smaller films too. Like if something like The Last Black Man in San Francisco, which did not do well at the box office, they will slap that on a streaming platform faster than anything.
Will never go back.
No,
I don't know if we'll ever see those in theaters again.
No, but I do think something like The Farewell is a good example of that. Built up in a small limited release, and it built up an audience, and it built up enough momentum to
perhaps
just not to saying 3,000 theaters, but enough to get
in certain markets. I could see that.
And I mean, we're also talking about films that are primarily in big cities like that. Like small art house films are in big cities, and there will still be art house theaters at least available. I know that at least most of the art house films I do see end up are with the local theater chain that's been open this entire time. Or
those are the ones I'm worried about making it through 2021.
Yeah,
so we'll just have to see.
But we've done a good job. I mean, we're still on projection to have an Oscars. We're going to have most of the Oscar films been put on streaming platforms this year. So if that's the case, then we just end up seeing all these places like Neon and A24 and all these and all Focus Features, Sony Pictures Classic.
That's Netflix, great. I just hope there are the small independent movie theaters that want around still.
I think there will be some, Jay, but I think they might put a blockbuster in there just to bump up the.
Sure, yeah, and they already do that, but Bob and Sue's Cinerama cannot raise the kind of debt that AMC can to get. They can't get the life preserver that the big chains can get, and they're the people who are willing to show those smaller movies and who, at their core, have more or as much interest in the art form as the revenue generation. So,
well, I will. Oh, I'm sorry, JD.
Well, I was just gonna say, and if the distributors are just going, if their first thought is to just put them straight on streaming services, like again going back to Last Black Man in San Francisco, if that's immediately going to be a streaming service thing, then what are the indie theaters going to show? No, they're going to have no choice but to show the big chain movies, and even the big chains. If all they're showing is tentpole films, are you going to do that in all 16 screens?
Well, I mean,
how is that going to work? Like,
I mean, they're
going to have to learn to evolve, because I just don't know how they're going to survive even just that.
But they're at the mercy of the studios, though. That's the problem.
I will say this: I am in a very unique position, which is crazy because over the years I've been here at In Session Film, I've been more of the person that's getting everything last, and I'm always complaining about that amongst you guys. But now I'm sort of in the unique position where my theaters have been open this entire run during the pandemic, whether that's smart or not. They have been, and they've been showing the model of keeping the business open and adding more employees and finding ways and creative marketing and stuff. I see it around all the time to keep the doors open. And I think also this too is that maybe the sort of what we haven't talked about either too is what happened in the pandemic, which is what I love to see, which is the drive-in theaters. And a lot of those have been sort of popping back up and becoming more a part of the lexicon.
That could be a big thing.
That could be I think it is, because I mean, I went and saw Tenet at the drive-in. It was one of the 2 times I saw it, and that place was packed. And the other ones did pretty good, but that one was like sold out, lines, of cars down the street. And that was opening weekend. And that's a place where that's a place where you can get full capacity rather than a theater at this point. And so
it's always going to be a novelty thing, though.
It is, but at the same token, is that if you can at least make it accessible and say that, yes, for those places, for the big cities or smaller cities or whatever it is, we'll make it accessible, we'll give you this film, then I think that that's another way where they can do that. But I also think this is the one thing we haven't really mentioned, and this Jay's going to kind of roll his eyes at me a little bit here, because I just know my co-host, is that a lot of people have talked about over the last, I guess, what is this, 12 hours or whatever this has been. It's not even been 12 hours or whatever. It's like 10, maybe less, is that all this probably would have been solved if in the COVID packaging of, bailing out businesses, the theaters were a part of that discussion. With the current administration in the White House that is going to go in, that is a more sort of art focused, liberal,
I don't know why Ryan said I would roll my eyes at this, but
no, because you don't trust the process of politics,
left and right.
No, that is true.
You don't trust the process of politics, and so I do think even if it's an executive order or it's put in some sort of budgetary plan, I do think that there is a more likelihood in 2021 of the studios or just theaters in general getting some sort of government bailout. Not to the extent that would be crazy.
I be honest? There are 7,000 other places I would want the money to go to first before movie theaters. I will be honest.
No. They always go to them, and they never go to this. So for once, I'd like to put it back into to other things. We put money into things that are frivolous and crazy and stupid, that to the point that if we actually looked at the budget, we'd all roll our eyes at it and be like, why are we spending that money there? But this is a business. I mean, businesses are bailed out by, and we're given stimuluses from and tax exemptions and all these different things. These are businesses. These are places that have employees that need to put food on the table, and that's something you have to think about this as well. And I think the studios, they're trying to think about how they get their products to make as much money as possible, but the theaters themselves need to be proactive and get somebody to lobby for them at Congress. And get an ear on, because if they do fall away, I don't know if we'll be able to have $200 million action films anymore, because of the fact that I don't know how the hell they're going to make their budgets back unless they're just going to accumulate debt until they say, okay, it's
the
done.
Rebirth of the mid-budget movie for grown-ups, baby. Let's go.
All go full circle. We'll go back to smaller budget things.
That's fine with me. I mean, if this means no more Marvel movies, that's good. Like, let's just kill them all.
We laugh and joke, but maybe that is the trajectory, is that in the next decade, until we kind of find ourselves, from the ramifications of all this, is that we do go back to the low budget, the mid budget films reign. And then once the economy finds itself and we can, overcome all the ramifications of this in another 5-7 years or whatever it is, then maybe we can get back to some of those big budget films. But at the same time, as much money as Disney has made, and not even just Disney, but really all of the studios on their bigger films, I don't know if they're going to be willing to part from that so easily.
I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. This is going to be however long it is. I don't know. Call it 2 years from now, when things are box office is normal-ish again. They're going to operate the same way they operated in 2019, and they're going to be completely unaware of what audiences want. And movies are going to crash and burn, and there's going to be a huge paradigm shift in the state of blockbuster cinema, studio filmmaking. That's my prediction. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Check back in 2 years.
I think Jay might be a little bit right, because I do think that they are going to try to cram as much IP back down our throats as possible. But you could even see that
they've already been doing that.
Which they've already been doing, but they are going to do it to a degree that is like downright offensive. Like you're gonna feel it, and you're just gonna go like, this feels dirty. And
but can you blame them though? Like in a time like this,
yeah,
they
I could blame
something.
them. Like
I say I don't know if I do, because in a time like this, it's really, it could be borderline stupid to take risk on something that you don't know. And right now you need to make money. And if you don't make money, you can't, not only will you not be able to fund other bigger films, but the smaller films, you might as well kiss those goodbye.
Yeah, but at the same token, JD, like most of the times when they do make these existing properties, they're the most safest popcorn cramming nonsensical things that you and I do think most people are getting fired.
We can argue that all day, but
people
a lot
getting,
of them make money.
I mean,
still.
They're making money, but I mean, you even look at it like from, I'll just use Star Wars. That's the bad word of the day. As an example, is those movies made less and less money as they went on. And maybe that's because of the quality of the film or franchise fatigue or whatever that is. They were making less and less money. And, you know, superhero movies are sort of the Western, or they're sort of the musical of the time, right? Or the buddy cop of like the 80s, where they're making hand over fist the most money. The thing about it is that we're going to see after this if that's what people still want to see. You know, are people going to want to go back to seeing the same old stuff, or are they going to want, you know, some new places to dream of, because they were stuck at
since
home.
We are in a new phase of the MCU. Like it is, that old phase of the MCU is over.
Safe.
It's basically like starting a new franchise.
Yeah, they're starting
when you have this
scratch.
long of a gap between movies.
And I
So
can tell you
that's going to
this.
be interesting.
And I can tell you this: if they were smart, if Disney was smart, they would just release Black Widow now. Like, get that out of the way. It's a prequel.
Just keep it in the consciousness.
Just get it out of there, so then they can go to Eternals, so they can start marketing that, so they can start getting ahead of it.
It is a prequel that kind of like ties back to the old MCU.
I'm telling you, you know, I judge my wife and I judge a lot of my friends who aren't movie guys like us. And I asked them, I'm like, would you pay to see Black Widow right now? And they're like, no, it's like a prequel, right? I'm like, yes, it's a prequel. And they're like, they go and see all these movies. They go and see all these. And they're like, no, I don't really want to see that. Like, I'd rather see Wonder Woman, or I'd rather see a Tenet, or I'd rather see
It is a
Dune.
really weird way
You know
to
what I mean?
follow up the end of that phase. But
well,
that has nothing to do with Warner Brothers.
No, but I mean, it's that I will say this, and I'm going to say this from an Oscar perspective, because I think this is genius by Warner Brothers. Like, I truly, honestly think this is genius, because one of the first movies they're going to release in this whole system is Judas and the Black Messiah, right? And they're going to run an Oscar campaign for that. And because they just submitted it for SAG and everything. They are all over the news, and they are going to be looking like the forward-thinking studio, the new savior. They were the first ones during COVID to start experimenting and trying stuff out with Tenet. Now they're doing this with Wonder Woman, and now they're going to do this with their whole slate, and they're being proactive. And I'm just telling you from a standpoint, if it works out, people are going to want to celebrate them, and they're going to want to give them a big congratulations on the back for it. So if this Wonder Woman thing works out, and it's a good thing for the rest of their slate, because there's no guarantee that they won't reevaluate at a certain point halfway through the year. I mean, there's no guarantee whatsoever. I mean, businesses change all the time. So, you know, and especially ones that are trying to make as most cash as possible. They will. I mean, there's literally a picture of Javier Bardem and Tom Cruise and Johnny Depp and all these people with a dark universe that never happened.
We love it. We love the dark universe.
So therefore, what I'm telling you is that things change. So the news that is now could be yesterday's news in a couple of months.
We'll see. All right. Well, let's go ahead and round out this conversation and kind of get to some final thoughts. Jay, I'm curious to hear a little bit more from you as we round out things here.
I think if there's one thing we can all agree on, the main culprit who is responsible for this is Christopher Nolan.
Son of a bitch.
If Tenet had not come out, this would not be happening.
Can we get him out? No,
that is
shut up.
fact.
No,
that is a fact.
No, Jay, you're just
I do think
deflecting the
it plays a
blame.
role.
I think you're
I do think
deflecting
it
the
plays a
blame
role.
from yourself, Jay, because we all know you started this thing because you just had to change extra film because you didn't want to watch all the smaller films and stuff, and you just had to do the miniseries. Deflect blame to Christopher Nolan all you want.
You can blame whoever you want for the start of the coronavirus, but this HBO Max thing is because of Tenet. And just one last thing to consider is the fact that a lot of places don't even have HBO. So internationally, piracy is going to be out of control.
Yep.
So they're going to undercut themselves in the international markets, as well as limiting their revenue streams in the United States. So
that's a great point. Yeah. Ryan, any final thoughts?
Yeah. So I just want to say one thing, and we're live, and I'm very much on the record with this. HBO Max, now that they have made this
Watch
thing,
your language.
I'm not going to say anything bad. I'm just going to say this, and then I hope everybody enjoys it, is that HBO Max, whoever it is, just make the damn deal to get Roku. So then all the people on Twitter can shut up about Roku not having HBO Max. It is the most stupidest conversation I see every day from people that could, I don't know, have another device like a Fire Stick or have a game console or all these other different things, or have it on their phone or whatever, and stream it off of their phone to their TV. There's so many other ways, and you decided to just grab a Roku, which is fine, but it's also at the same token, like, I shouldn't have to hear from those people every single day. It is so annoying. So with that, HBO Max, Warner Brothers, please get this deal done. So then these people can move on to, I guess, their Fire Stick's not working, or that they'll have download speed problems with this whole thing, like, so they can bitch about something else, because I'm just so tired of seeing the Roku stuff. Like, that's my last thing about it.
Okay. Ryan stepping off his soapbox now. The last final thought for me real fast as Sam comes in here to bookend things, because Ryan, you missed it, but he was here at the beginning of this episode.
Sam had some really good thoughts
Sam,
on the Warner business model.
Did he have like some graphs and stuff, like showing the projection of the plus minus negative costs on all of this?
He wanted to show us his PowerPoint, but JD thought it would be a little too in the weeds.
Yeah, I think so. That's a niche market, JD, for sure.
Yeah. As far as my final thought here, and I try not to be pessimistic. I try to look into the optimism. And Ryan has done a pretty good job, not just on this episode, but in some of our texting back and forth, of trying to maintain hope. And I'm going to try to cling to that, because obviously I love movie theaters. I want movie theaters to survive. My initial reaction to this, though, was, not that movie theaters are dead, but I'm very concerned about the long-term health, because as I've noted a couple times, I don't see Hollywood going back from this. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe once vaccines come in and people are willing to go back at full go, and we return to a full normal where people go to the theaters all the time, and it's as it was. But just given the trajectory of where Hollywood was going, given the precedent of history, I don't know if we're going back. I've always felt that this was where things were going anyway. And so, just with everything,
never going to be like it was in March 2020 ever again. That is for sure.
Yeah, I don't see it ever going back to the way it was. I think streaming will always play a pivotal role. And I do think movies going forward will be released simultaneously in some way on streaming, or shortly after, not the 3-month window or whatever it used to be. I think it'll be more like a week, 2 weeks, and then we'll see it at home and in theaters as well. And maybe that will be a great thing. Maybe they can still find a way to make money. I do think theaters will evolve. We've joked in other conversations, at least I think, Ryan, you were part of that, about theaters doing other things like showing sports and concerts and things like that. And maybe that will be a part of the larger conversation as well, because theaters will have to change. They'll have to adapt. I don't think they're fully going away.
No.
A lot of them may close. I think if anything, it'll become a thinner, entertainment source.
It'll have to build back up, JD. It'll probably, what it'll be like is, for a while there might just be bigger ones, and then of course over time, as we get away and we start to get back to normal, then mom and
No,
pop.
I don't think. No, I think the days of opening a new movie theater are over. That's done.
Yeah.
I don't.
No, I'm kind of with Jay on this one, because because of the combination factor, because films will always still be at home as an option and the theater. I don't see theaters making enough money to be able to expand.
And I'm talking strictly like independent mom and pop owned theaters.
No,
I think that's a non-starter.
So we'll have to see, boys. I don't know.
We'll have to see.
Hey, we get to see Dune.
We get to see Dune. Just give me Dune. Just cut this nonsense out. I don't want to wait till late next year. Just give me Dune now. Give me it all. Movies.
Movies indeed. Well, let us know what you all think. You can hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us in sessionfilm.com. Of course, you can just leave a comment on this video as well. Hopefully we'll be able to do more things like this in the future. Thanks, Ryan and Jay, for joining me. Really appreciate it, fellas. And we'll see you all next time we get together to have fun like this.